All right, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jackie Hoban. I'm a Senior Natural Resource Specialist with Montgomery Parks. We are here in Wheaton Regional Park off of Nairn Road, where we're looking at one of our recent outfall restoration projects. We call it the Nairn Road Outfall Restoration Project. This took place the winter of 2022, and so we stabilized the outfall and did a lot of native plantings along the channel in the hopes of reducing continued erosion from this tributary downstream into Pine Lake. So there's various structures in the channel that were constructed, including like rock sills, riffles to kind of bring the stream channel up so that any stormwater that flows through here is slowed down. There's some pools in the stream now that kind of give the stream a little more capacity to hold on to some storm water. Again, as we get storm flows coming through, the stream channel has a chance to kind of hold on to them, slow things down, and send much less sediment downstream. Does anybody have any questions or anything we want to talk about?
I just want to know what is defined as an outfall.
Yeah, so an outfall is essentially a piped system that comes from, a developed area, sending storm water from that developed area. So when you're in a neighborhood, you have a lot of impervious surface, including the structures themselves, roadways, sidewalks, and when it rains, all that water has to go somewhere. And so when we develop these areas, we create underground piped networks of stormwater pipes, and the outfall is that end point, so where that water discharges. Montgomery Parks is a stream valley park system, so we have over 490 miles of stream, and essentially what that means is we're like downstream of everything. We are the lowest points in the county, so we get a lot of stormwater discharges. We have a lot of outfalls on parkland. We have mapped over 1,600 outfalls on park property, and there are more than that out there. Some belong to us, but a lot belong to Montgomery County Department of Transportation, State Highway Administration. So we coordinate with those folks to identify and restore outfalls that are in disrepair, because traditionally when these things were sited, when the county has been developing in the past, outfall pipes were really just send this water away as quickly as possible,
Right.
Without much thought to where we're putting these pipes.
Yeah.
Is it outfalling into erodible soils or a steep slope? A lot of times these pipes go right into stream banks. So we have a lot of programs, like I said, coordinating with DOT. We have some internal programs as well where we try to identify areas where we can stabilize eroded channels, cut back pipes from stream banks so that we can get a longer flow path, daylight those pipes. Is what we call that when you're cutting them back, kind of bringing those stream channels up. And a lot of times these outfalls can be just ephemeral channels, meaning they only transmit stormwater, so it only has water in the channel when it rains. But sometimes these are piped streams where we had streams running through areas we wanted to develop. You put them in a pipe underground and they come out, so they have perennial flow. This one's probably somewhere in between, more of a ephemeral intermittent channel because it doesn't always have water in it.
So is there more of a concerted effort now when there's new development to make sure that these are not just pushed into parkland without
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's actually a big part of my role at Parks. So I'm part of a group that does what's called environmental review. So anytime there's going to be any impacts to parkland, whether that's from like a highway being built that's going to expand onto park property or a simple outfall from a development, a new development, old development, we review it to make sure that it's in compliance with our standards. So we typically aren't accepting just stormwater outfall pipes being dropped at the edge of our property line. We can't control everything that happens off our property, but we are aware of development in the county, and we do take a look at where these structures are being built, and if they have to come onto our property, we make sure that they have a stable outflow onto property and down to the floodplain, and hopefully disperse the water across the floodplain. And now with new development, there's a lot more regulation on stormwater management. So there's a lot of It's called environmental site design. A lot of small bioretention facilities that treat stormwater like at the source. So if you build a new parking lot or a new roadway, you are oftentimes required to build stormwater management directly adjacent to that to help treat water from two standpoints. So there's quality and quantity. Some of these, like bioretention, small bioretentions, they treat small amounts of water and they improve the quality of the water, giving it a chance to infiltrate into the ground and sort of act as a filter. And then you have quantity, so areas that can hold large amounts of water and slow down the water that's being discharged. At this spot in particular, we built a much larger structure than would probably be typical for such a small channel. But prior to construction, this tree and its roots were pretty much the only things holding the soil and grade upstream of this. Right at this tree, there was a huge drop off and then a steeply eroded bank downstream of here. And as you can see, this channel takes a pretty hard bend in that direction. And so what we did was we stabilized what we call sort of this like head cut, this area where we have that drop off with a large rock cascade to hold the grade here. We called that a grade control structure, and get the water down in a stable way so it doesn't continue to take those erosive velocities and disturb the banks and send sediment downstream. So holding this grade, and then we graded out this bank and created what we call a flood-prone bench. So there's that slightly higher area that's above the stream channel, but you can see in storm flows it gets some flow. You can see the rack lines of the leaves in there and the plants bent over. And so what that did is give the stream a little bit of relief as those storm flows come through. That water has a place to go instead of just running up against that steep bank and again causing more and more erosion. So just giving it some relief, sending it around this bank. And then we planted it up with some plants that can tolerate and like sort of those wetter soil conditions intermittently. So for this project, we planted over 29 trees, which you can see we used our biobark tree cages. So these are a tool we're implementing to help protect our trees from deer rub that are biodegradable. So it's acacia wood with a, coconut or biodegradable fiber holding it together. So the idea is that over time they kind of degrade and fall apart versus those plastic tree shelters that oftentimes get left behind and then become trash in the parks. So we try to use those as often as we can. And then we planted, of those 29 trees, there were 12 species of trees. Shrubs, we planted 55, and there were 6 different species of those. And then herbaceous plugs, we had over 750, and we had 8 different species of those. And those all came from Pope Farm. So we also have a seed mix that gets applied. That's a mix of some other native riparian species that sort of like the wetter floodplain habitat that we're working in. And then you guys planted how many?
Oh, it was hundreds. I don't know how many we planted.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and check my emails from Corinne, but I know you guys planted
44 just in my little section. I just remember the number.
That's great. Well, we appreciate you guys.
Well, yeah, we had Stonewood students helping us.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for all the work you do, not only planting those plants, but controlling the invasives that help our native plantings establish better. I am certain that the work you guys do is critical to these plants doing as well as they have been out here, so really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Weed Warriors have been crucial on a lot of these projects like this where you guys have been out managing particularly vines, climbing vines that grow up on tree cages and tree protection and our new plantings. So that's extremely critical. And then places like this where we've planted a significant number of shrubs in order for them to grow and establish, getting a handle on a lot of those multiflora rose, barberry, invasive shrubs that move in and take over is essential as well. So just making room for these things to establish has been great and super critical.